Admiral Douglas French, known as Doug to his friends and the Old Man to nearly everyone else, sat on the porch of his modest home on the colony world of New Cleveland. At 70 years old, his weathered face told the story of countless battles and hard-won victories. He sipped his morning coffee, savoring the peace he'd fought so hard to achieve. The calm was shattered by the insistent beeping of his comm unit. Doug sighed, recognizing the priority signal of Terran High Command. Not again, he muttered, considering for a moment whether to ignore it. But duty, as always, won out. "French here," he answered gruffly. The holographic image of Fleet Admiral Yoshida appeared, her expression grave. "Doug, we need you back. It's big this time." Doug's mind flashed back to all the other times he'd heard those words. The Proxima Centauri uprising, the Oort Cloud insurrection, the Battle of Tau Ceti. Each time, he'd answered the call, postponing his retirement yet again. "With all due respect," Admiral Doug began, "I'm 70 years old. Surely there are younger, sharper minds who can handle whatever crisis has popped up this time." Yoshida's hologram shook its head. "Not like this, Doug. We've discovered a network of wormholes spanning multiple star systems. It's a game changer, and the Arcturus Dominion is already moving to seize control. We need your experience, your instincts. You've won impossible wars before. We need you to do it again." Doug closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders once more. "Send a ship," he said finally. "I'll be ready in an hour." The briefing room aboard the Terran flagship Indomitable buzzed with nervous energy. Doug stood at the front, studying the holographic map of the newly discovered wormhole network. Each point of light represented a star system connected by glowing lines that signified stable wormhole routes. "As you can see," Lieutenant Commander Aria Hale, a brilliant young tactical officer, was saying, "the network spans 17 systems, 3 of which are currently inhabited. The Arcturus Dominion has already seized control of 2 junction points, giving them a significant strategic advantage." Doug nodded, his mind already racing through potential strategies. "And our forces?" he asked. "Spread thin," answered his XO, Commander Jackson. "We've got battle groups at these 4 points, but we're outnumbered and struggling to respond to the Arcturus fleet's movements." "Conventional tactics won't work here," Doug mused, stroking his silver beard. "We're dealing with a new paradigm. Forget everything you know about traditional space warfare. In this theater, entire fleets can appear in a system with no warning. Response times are measured in minutes, not days." He turned to address the assembled officers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to rewrite the book on interstellar combat. I hope you're ready for a crash course." The first engagement came sooner than anyone expected. The Indomitable had just emerged from a wormhole into an uninhabited system designated WH5 when proximity alarms blared. "Arcturus Battle Group detected," shouted the sensor officer. 5 cruisers, 8 destroyers, bearing 045 Mark 030. "Battle stations," Doug commanded, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around him. "Tactical, give me a firing solution on the lead cruiser. Helm, bring us about to heading 090 Mark 015, full impulse." As the massive ship turned, Doug's mind raced. The Arcturus fleet had the advantage in numbers and firepower, but they were just as new to wormhole warfare as the Terrans. He needed to use that. "Comms, send encrypted burst transmissions through the wormhole we just exited. Make it look like we're calling for reinforcements." Lieutenant Hale caught on immediately. "Brilliant, sir. They'll think we have backup coming." Doug allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the threat of force is more powerful than force itself. "Now, let's see how they react." The gambit worked. The Arcturus fleet, fearing an ambush, split their forces. Half moved to cover the wormhole, while the rest engaged the Indomitable. Now Doug shouted, "All batteries, fire at will. Helm, take us straight through their formation." The Indomitable surged forward, its advanced point defense systems intercepting incoming fire while its main guns tore into the enemy ships. In the confusion, 2 Arcturus destroyers collided, their shields failing catastrophically. Sir Hale called out, "The wormhole is fluctuating. I think. Yes, it's becoming unstable from all the weapons' fire." Doug saw the opportunity immediately. All ships fall back to minimum safe distance. Tactical, launch quantum torpedoes into the wormhole breach. Let's give our friends a goodbye present. The resulting explosion as the torpedoes detonated inside the destabilizing wormhole was spectacular. The shockwave caught the remaining Arcturus ships, leaving them easy prey for the Terran force. As the last enemy cruiser signaled its surrender, a cheer went up on the Indomitable's bridge. Doug allowed his crew a moment of celebration before calling for silence. "This was a victory," he said solemnly, "but it's just the beginning. The Arcturus Dominion will adapt, and so must we. This war will be unlike any we've fought before. It will be swift, it will be brutal, and it will be won by those who can think fastest on their feet." He looked around at the mix of veteran and fresh faces. "I've led you into the fire once again," he continued. "I promise you, I will do everything in my power to lead you out. For Earth, for all of humanity's colonies, we must secure this wormhole network. The future of interstellar travel and commerce hangs in the balance. We are the line that stands against chaos. We are humanity's shield and sword." As Doug finished speaking, he felt a familiar fire in his belly. The weariness of age fell away, replaced by the sharp focus of impending battle. The wormhole wars had begun, and once again, humanity's fate rested on his shoulders. The klaxons blared, signaling another incoming threat. Admiral Douglas French, the old man of the stars, straightened his uniform and strode towards the command chair. There would be time for rest later. Right now, there was a war to win. The bridge of the Indomitable was a hive of controlled chaos. Admiral Doug French stood at the tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic star map. Red indicators blinked ominously, showing multiple Arcturus incursions across the wormhole network. "Status report," Doug barked, his voice cutting through the noise. "Commander Jackson," his XO responded grimly. "We've lost contact with our forces in the Sigma Draconis system, sir. The Arcturus have taken control of 3 more junction points in the last 6 hours." Doug's jaw tightened. The situation was deteriorating faster than he'd anticipated. What about the Rigel outpost? Holding, but barely Lieutenant Hale chimed in. "They're requesting immediate reinforcement." The old admiral closed his eyes for a moment, weighing his options. When he opened them, there was steel in his gaze. "We can't be everywhere at once. We need to change the game." He turned to his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to Fleet Admiral Yoshida. It's time we discussed Operation Longbow." As the crew scrambled to comply, Doug felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. He'd been in impossible situations before, but this was different. The wormhole network had changed everything. Battles that once took weeks now unfolded in hours. Entire fleets could appear in a system with no warning, turning the tide of conflict in minutes. Sir Hale approached hesitantly. "I've been analyzing the Arcturus attack patterns. There's something off about their movements. It's almost as if they're searching for something specific." Doug raised an eyebrow. "Go on, Lieutenant." Hale pulled up a series of data points on the tactical display. "See here and here. They're bypassing strategically valuable systems to probe seemingly random locations. It doesn't make sense unless they're looking for something we don't know about." Doug finished, his mind racing. "Good work, Hale. I want you to head up a task force. Find out what they're after." The young officer's eyes widened. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." As Hale hurried off, the comms officer announced, "Admiral, I have fleet command for you." Doug nodded, steeling himself. "Put them through." The holographic form of Fleet Admiral Yoshida materialized on the bridge. Her expression was grim. "French, please tell me you have good news." "I'm afraid not," Admiral Doug replied. "The situation is critical. I'm recommending we initiate Operation Longbow immediately." Yoshida's hologram flickered, her frown deepening. "That's a risky play, Doug. If it fails, we'll be leaving Earth vulnerable. And if we do nothing, we'll lose the entire network," Doug countered. "It's time to go all in." After a long moment, Yoshida nodded. "Very well, Admiral. You have full authorization. Godspeed." As the transmission ended, Doug turned to his crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to embark on the most ambitious operation in the history of the Terran fleet. Our target is the Arcturus stronghold in the Denb system. We'll be striking at the heart of their command and control." He paused, looking each officer in the eye. "I won't lie to you. This mission is high risk, with a low probability of success. But if we pull it off, we'll cripple the Arcturus war effort and secure the Wormhole network for humanity. Any objections?" The bridge was silent for a moment before Commander Jackson spoke up. "We're with you, sir. All the way." Doug allowed himself a small smile. "Then let's make history." The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation and combat. The Indomitable led a series of lightning raids across the network, keeping the Arcturus forces off balance while the main Terran fleet gathered for the decisive strike. As they prepared for the final jump into Denb, Lieutenant Hale approached Doug with newfound urgency. "Admiral, we've cracked it. We know what the Arcturus are searching for." Doug's eyes narrowed. "Let's hear it, Lieutenant." Hale pulled up a schematic on the nearest display. "It's a device, sir. Something that can manipulate the wormholes themselves. We think it can collapse them permanently." The implications hit Doug like a physical blow. With such a device, the Arcturus could isolate entire star systems, cutting them off from the network forever. The balance of power in the galaxy would shift irrevocably. "Change of plans," Doug announced, his mind already formulating a new strategy. "We're not going to destroy the Arcturus command center. We're going to capture it." The battle for Denb would go down in history as one of the most audacious military operations ever conceived. Doug's fleet emerged from multiple wormholes simultaneously, catching the Arcturus defenders in a desperate pincer movement. As the Indomitable ducked and weaved through enemy fire, Doug coordinated the assault with the precision of a maestro. Battle Group Alpha pushed through Sector 7. Beta and Gamma collapsed their flanks. All ships watch for gravitational anomalies. They may try to use the device. The fighting was fierce, with losses mounting on both sides. But slowly, inexorably, the Terran forces pushed towards the Arcturus command station. In the final moments, as the Indomitable lined up for the killing blow against the last Arcturus dreadnought, a transmission cut through the chaos. "This is Grand Admiral Cole of the Arcturus Dominion," a gravelly voice announced. "Admiral French, I presume." Doug's eyes narrowed. "This is French. What do you want, Cole?" There was a pause before the Arcturus leader responded. "I've studied your career, Admiral. You're a worthy opponent. I propose a ceasefire. This war will only lead to mutual destruction." For a moment, Doug was tempted to refuse. The Arcturus had started this conflict, after all. But as he looked at the casualty report scrolling across his display, he knew what he had to do. "Agreed," Doug said finally. "On one condition. The Wormhole device is turned over to a neutral third party. This network is too important to be controlled by any one faction." There was a longer pause this time. "Acceptable," Cole replied eventually. "You are as wise as you are cunning, Admiral French." As the ceasefire took hold and the flames of battle subsided, Doug allowed himself to relax for the first time in weeks. He turned to his crew, seeing the mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration on their faces. "Well done, all of you," he said softly. "We've secured a future for humanity among the stars." Lieutenant Hale approached, a questioning look in her eyes. "Sir, what happens now?" Doug smiled, feeling every one of his 70 years. "Now, Lieutenant, now I retire." For real this time, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "And I leave the future in capable hands like yours." As the Indomitable began its journey home, Doug French looked out at the stars. He had fought his last war, faced his final challenge. And once again, humanity had proven its resilience, its adaptability, its unquenchable spirit. The Wormhole network would open up new frontiers, new challenges, and new opportunities. But whatever the universe had in store, Doug knew that humanity would face it head-on, just as they always had. With a contented sigh, the old man of the stars turned away from the viewport. It was time to go home. He simply hoped that this time he might remain in retirement. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.